I'll do sometimes people will post in the Q&A instead of the chat. So you might just have to check that every once in a while. I'll try and remind people to post in the Zoom chat so everyone can see the discussion. But sometimes just kind of keep an eye on that in case somebody forgets and posts a question in there.
So can not everybody see Q&A then? Only a few people? Or how does that work?
So it should be down on the bottom of your panel. There's
the Q&A button.
Yeah. You can
preferred to be in the chat. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. So people are saying hello already. Welcome.
Excellent.
All right, and we're live, Corinne.
Okay. Very cool. All right, 7:59, one more minute. Welcome everybody who's already here. We're gonna get started in just a minute with our August Network and Learn, UDL IRN Network and Learn, and about learning space design. So another minute, one more minute to shout out to your friends and the Twitterverse or wherever and tell them to pop on and join us. Okay. All right, so it is 8 o'clock and welcome to the UDL IRN Network and Learn series. We're really excited to kick off the series for the 2019-20 school year for those of you who are just getting ready to come back with a learning space design topic. So we're going to be talking all about, we have some great panelists tonight talking about learning space design in your classroom or school building, or maybe across your district or at the university level. Really thinking about moving beyond just flexible seating. And so we're really excited that you've joined us tonight, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So, whoops, my name is Corinne Hauer. I'm going to be your moderator for tonight. And we have a whole host of people here behind the scenes who are going to be helping out. So Mackenzie, Nicholas, and Lainey, and Lainey, I'm going to mispronounce your name again. Eichenlab?
Yes, exactly. You got it.
I did it. Lainey Eichenlab. They're going to be moderating our Zoom and Twitter chats. So, and if you're wondering how to participate in the conversation, then we're going to tell you about that in just a second. So, one way you can participate is right here on our Zoom call. If you're on the Zoom meeting, if you're here, please feel free to post any questions, comments, ideas, praise, whatever you want to do in the Zoom chat. So just remember, if you can post any of those comments and questions in the chat window instead of the Q&A. We really like everybody to make this feel like a really interactive conversation and discussion. So if you put them in the Q&A, nobody else gets to see them. So go ahead and post them in the chat, and Lainey will be monitoring those, and every once in a while we'll stop and pull some questions and comments from there so that you can interact with our panelists tonight. Also on our Twitter feed at #UDLIRN, Mackenzie will be monitoring that. So if you are following on Twitter, please feel free to post anything on there, interact with our panelists, and to tweet out any resources or great ideas that you have from the presentation tonight. So as we move forward, whoops, sorry, I'm having a hard time. I don't have there we go. So I'm going to introduce our panelists for tonight, and we're going to get our discussion going. So we're super excited to have a really diverse panel talking about this, and some great ideas to share with all of you who are getting ready to launch into your school year, or those of you who are already into your school year and you're looking for some fresh ideas. So first we have David Reed from Gould Evans, and he's a design lead there. He's going to be talking about a project that UDL-IRN partnered with Gould Evans on the UDL Idea Space Design Kit, and so we'll have some discussion about that, get some great ideas from David. Alex Hollingshead from University of Idaho, and she is Associate Professor of Special Education there and Program Coordinator, and has done a lot with integrating UDL everything from space design and beyond into that higher education setting. So for those of you who are in the higher ed world, Alex has lots of expertise to share. And then Amy Nikolash is a 6th grade teacher at Reitz Puffer Intermediate School in Michigan, and has had lots of success in designing really thoughtful things in her classroom environment to help make the most out of the space that's there and really empower her students. So everything from product design to higher ed to K-12, and we're really excited to get started. So again, feel free to interact, pose questions to any of our panelists, and I'm going to go ahead right now. We're going to get started, and first I'm going to turn it over to David. So David, if you want to just introduce yourself and give a little bit more background and tell us kind of a little bit more about the, sorry, I'm having trouble with my slideshow tonight. Tell us a little more about the UDL Learning Spaces Idea Kit and some of your favorite pieces from that.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. So yeah, my name's David Reed. I'm a principal at Gould Evans Architects. We're a national firm and we do a lot of work, but I dwell in the world of education. And had the good fortune of meeting Jamie Basham about 4 years ago, who was one of the original founders of the UDL IRN, as most of you probably know. And we were working actually on a side project at KU and got to chatting about the UDL work. And he said, you know, David, we don't have anything about space design guidelines for UDL. Would you guys be interested in helping us think about it? And threw my hand up and said, sure, not knowing where it was going. So I spent the next 6 to 8 months trying to really get my head around it, and really glad I did, because I just have come to understand what a powerful tool it is. So, you know, Corinne and Mackenzie and Lainey suggested we share maybe a couple of sample cards out of the idea kit. It's a deck of about 60 cards. I think Corinne's going to show more about it in a little bit. Each card's got kind of image on the front and some text on the back that relate to all the UDL checkpoints. And so I wanted to kind of share this first screen that is out of the reference guide. And if you own a set of cards, the idea kit, there's a link that I think will be shared in a little while to an online reference guide. And so for every card that's got a number in the lower right corner that you see, there's a set of references that particular space design idea relates to. And it's through this reference guide that you can kind of use as a crosswalk. So if you're working on something in your classroom and you're trying to think about ways to offer more student choice, you can go online, find the document, do a Control F search, type in choice, and it'll take you to every idea card in the deck that relates to choice or student choice, individual choice. You can search as you like. And so, you know, it can be used in a lot of different ways, and I can get into that a little bit later if anyone's further interested. But it is all kind of cross-referenced to the UDL checkpoint. So, Corinne, if you want to go to the next slide. Do you want to advance to the next slide? Okay, there we go. So as I was kind of getting my head into the guidelines, the one that stood out to me was that 7.1 about providing individual choice, and also just allowing students to make space and to build their own environments. And I immediately thought about the post-occupancy work that we'd done in Milpitas Unified. And so these were some images out of one space where the students had come in and actually kind of created their own environments. And it took very little time, and they were immediately very engaged. And it really brought home the importance to me of creating the opportunities. I've talked to other educators since then that have done some really creative and effective approaches in their classroom to offer a similar amount of choice, and it really can help kind of elevate intrinsic motivation and engagement. So next slide is another topic that comes up quite a bit. So this year down at the summit in Orlando, we were doing a breakout session again, and one of the teachers in the session's like, yeah, I got the deck last year. I was going through it, and this one particularly stood out to her. And so what she had done is she'd gone back, talked to her custodian, and said, "Can you take all the doors off of my cabinets?" And he's like, "Yeah, I can do that if you want." And she said, once I did that, it was incredible how powerful it was for students to be able to get up, get the supplies they needed, to really begin to work with a lot more self-regulation, to begin to work like we do in STEAM Studio. We've got an experimental classroom in our office. It's shown in the two left images. And there, my co-founder, Dr. Manny Sonnenberg, who teaches in the School of Ed at Rockhurst, she's like, we don't raise our hands in STEAM Studio. If students need a pair of scissors, they get up and go get them. She's like, you don't see the architects raising their hands. So, and if there's no scissors left, you wait till there's some available, and they begin to learn some of those skills that are so important as they begin to get into an environment that they've got to kind of self-regulate themselves through. And similarly with the makerspace on the right, at another school recently completed, you notice upper right image, open shelving, everybody can see what's in the room, bottom right image, clear bins, supplies right there. So students can see what's available, they get it, they put it away, and it really begins to kind of teach some of those skills. So these are really simple things. I think you'll find throughout the deck, there's both ideas for really big picture, ideas that relate to overall school design, and there's some really small kind of space hack ideas that I think about any teacher could pull off in their classroom, and really just kind of use these cards as a catalyst for starting, some new thought starters among your colleagues and just for your own classroom.
Absolutely. That, David, I love that, the simplicity of that. I think that was one of the things I was struck by when I first was introduced to that deck. You see these pictures of all this really amazing furniture, and the first thing you think is, well, sure, if I had all of that, and those things are available and they're nice, and when you do have those resources, but they really can be, the ideas and concepts in the card really can be applied in any setting. Was something that I really appreciated about that. And just something as simple as taking the doors off your cabinets to help your students be more self-directed and gather things and that they need, and decide what they need and when they need it, and work at their own pace.
Yep.
Very cool. Excellent. So, and David, what age groups do you typically work with, or what are you working mostly K-12? Are you in the higher ed settings too, or
within our design practice?
Yes.
We're working, actually, we work all the way from pre-K through primary, secondary, collegiate, and even corporate learning. And so we're a little bit unique in that way, and it's really fun to see how all the ideas kind of cross-pollinate both up and down the spectrum. And so we leverage that perspective a lot. And I think it's kind of interesting to note how well kids kind of step up when you raise the bar for them. So bringing high school or secondary ideas to middle and elementary, it's like, they feel more grown up. They love the stand-up tables because they feel grown up. They love coming to STEAM Studio and Gould Evans' office because they're around adults, and their demeanor totally changes when they walk in the office. And so you can't underestimate the ability for kids to work in a more mature way if you create the environment and the culture that says, yeah, you're going to be expected to act like an adult. Now, I know it's not true for every student, and I'm not the educator, but I love talking with and learning from educators and observing. So yeah, I think that's a really strong takeaway.
Absolutely, that you have the expectation that they can manage themselves in that environment and are responsible enough, and then they step up to the challenge. I think that's great. And I think as being a person that's in education, sometimes those students who you think might not do the best in that environment will be the ones that surprise you the most, because they like that sense of being in control and treated a little bit more responsible. With a little more responsibility sometimes, I think. Not always.
Case studied kids that have done exactly that. We've had kids come into STEAM Studio that were failing in the classroom, and they were taught a new approach to learning, and they became leaders among their peers. And then they took that newfound insight on how they learn differently, and they took it back to their home school, and it totally turned around their whole education trajectory. So those are fun stories to hear about.
Absolutely, that's really powerful. Are those available on your website? Some of those case studies, David?
They should be, shouldn't they, Lainey?
maybe Lainey can throw a link to those in the chat, in the Zoom chat, when she gets a chance.
Yeah.
And
I'm happy to do that.
Fantastic. Awesome. Very cool. All right. So thanks, David, for getting us kicked off tonight. And now we're going to transition over to, maybe I missed one here. Oh.
Okay, I wasn't sure we had a couple slides in. So to show the power of student creativity, you might want to, after the webinar, check out this link. We hosted a space design challenge in Orlando at the summit this March. And we had 2 teams from Orlando schools compete against a team of teachers from Bartholomew School District up in Indiana. So there are 3 arenas. It was a Junkyard Wars style of competition with all the Northern Ival furniture. And it was an absolute blast. So Lainey has helped get posted a time-lapse video of the design challenge that happened there. And it shows you, if you empower kids to shape their own environment, what they can do.
Awesome. Very cool. And now the question, who won the design challenge?
Everybody.
Everybody. Equal up. Oh,
we had 6 different categories. And
okay.
It's so hard because, they're all approaching it from a very creative angle. And of course, the teachers brought a lot of, practicality and, and they had a different set of furniture too. The kids were faster to go get furniture out of the showroom or out of the event space. So the kids had a little more to work with.
Yeah, very cool. I love it.
Yeah. And then there might be one more slide up.
Let's see.
Yeah, so I didn't know if you had this at the end, Corinne, or not, but Lainey has built a website that anybody that is either interested in the deck or has the deck can go to udlideakit.org. There's a lot of FAQs on there. There's a lot of applications. So again, this card deck's turned into a lot more versatile tool than we originally imagined, which has been fantastic. So if you're looking to understand different ways to use it, kind of the story of its origins and things like that. So here's a resource that might be helpful for you.
And ideas about applications, and I love that. It's fantastic. So we'll throw that in the Zoom chat as well and tweet it out. And definitely go check it out. So now we're going to transition in from David and how some of those ideas and others have been integrated at the University of Idaho with Alex. So Alex, do you want to just quickly introduce yourself and tell a little bit about your UDL story, how you got here, and what you're doing in terms of creating student-friendly spaces and maybe colleague and staff-friendly spaces at your university?
Sure. Sure. Thank you for having me tonight. So I'm Dr. Alex Hollingshead. I'm an associate professor in special education and a program coordinator for our special education program here at the University of Idaho. And I guess my slides will be a little bit different, more, in idea generating or examples to share. So our education building has been recently renovated. And as we were thinking through the renovation process and designing the dream building, we not only wanted to make sure that it's accessible, but also that it is very intentionally designed to offer spaces that are flexible, that are versatile, that offer options. And so what I will share is pictures that align with some of the ideas from the Idea Kit, I guess, but more, I guess more as an inspiration or just to generate ideas. And my thinking behind it is that students who participate in education courses in our building get to experience this environment. And throughout our classes, we talk to them about the environment. We encourage them to utilize the environment in multiple flexible ways, so that then they can transfer that knowledge and transfer those experiences and the appreciation of that flexibility to their own future K-12 classrooms. So it's not just to enhance their higher education learning environment, but also to show them how those different options can really enhance their learning, and therefore, are very important to keep in mind as they move on to designing their own classrooms. So if we can move to another slide. The first example is about offering different options for collaboration. And one mistake I made is I waited till Monday to take those pictures, and we are not in session yet. So all of my pictures are just pictures of spaces without people utilizing those spaces. So I do apologize about that. But anyways, throughout our buildings, our different is 5-story building, and on every floor there are different spaces that allow students choice in how to work together, and how to encourage collaboration. So on 3 of the floors we have team rooms, which is that middle picture, and each of those team rooms is furnitured a little bit differently, but in everyone there's access to some sort of seating and table and a computer, and students. So it's perfect for students working on projects together or wanting to meet before or after class or study for exams and so on. And then throughout the hallways, there are spaces for groups to participate together. So from choices of higher tables with more like classroom style chairs, like in the right hand side picture, to more flexible seating. I know. Of sitting on the exercise ball or sitting on these amazing green, I don't know what they are called, but they are amazing. They're amazing green things. And you get to bounce while you sit there and talk to your collaborators. So then in the next slide, I snapped a couple pictures of spaces that are more geared towards individualized learning, but learning that is combined with being active. So we have in our building on 2 different floors, we have these bikes. And so as you are working on your laptop or reading a book or watching a video, whatever, that on your device that you can charge at this station as well, you also get to utilize a bicycle. And as you see, well, in the left hand side picture, that particular bike is positioned in such a way that you are also have access to daylight, which is very important. And then the other one is more, I've never used it. I think it would be I don't know, maybe it would be great. Who knows? I'm sure it's great. But that that one allows you, I think the bike also allows you to charge as you are moving, it allows you to charge your device. So then in the next picture, we have some more options in terms of accessing daylight or sunlight and making that connection to outdoors. So Corinne, if you can, thank you. So going from the right hand side, the bike example I just gave before, but then lots of our independent study desks are also on every floor. We have these desks, the long tables with chairs, so students can work on their assignments or on the readings or whatever. But also they are right in front of huge windows facing beautiful arboretum. So that really a lot of students gather in those spaces between classes all the time. They just really seek that space. And then to really raise the bar, we have a rooftop with much less space, but 3 collaborative tables and then some benches, so different options. And then the umbrellas you see over those tables are solar paneled, so so students can charge their devices as they work, and if assuming it's a sunny day. And then some other examples on the next slide. I pulled together kind of a mix of things. So in terms of options for expression of students' work and faculty work, so on 2 floors where there's primary space for classrooms, we have these huge panels of glass on which you can write with dry erase markers. So it allows students to express themselves between classes, but it also allows during class. I've used it many times. I would take students out of the classroom into the hallway and have this huge, it was something that used to be a chalkboard, right? In the more traditional classrooms, here's this huge glass panel where there's space for many people to write or draw at the same time, and kind of map out their ideas for discussion or assignment or whatnot. And then this glass display, in this particular case, we have examples of faculty articles and achievements, but I would think that, I think I saw it in David's slides, one of the examples, ability to display students' work would also be a great something that you can rotate through and then have a prominent place where exemplary work is for everyone to see. And then some more flexible spaces in the next slide. I wasn't able to walk into any of our classrooms because they were locked because we're not in session. Again, I apologize. But the first picture on the left, I snapped through the door. So we have several classrooms that are designed in this style, where students are gathered around work desks that can fit up to 6 people, and each desk is connected to a computer with a huge monitor display. And then the instructor lectern is actually in the middle of the classroom, so they can see all the students at the same time. Students can see everyone. And I mean, there's a lot of technology involved in these classrooms, but they allow for so much more engagement from students and so much more flexibility in a way you present your materials, in a way students participate in activities, and because you can broadcast slides or whatever documents you're showing to all of the monitors or just one, and then have multiple things displaying in different monitors, or you can give power completely to students and have them work on the monitors and then be able to show that to all of the entire class. Some other options for students around our curriculum center. So that's our small library on the right-hand side. And students there have options of, the differentiated seating of different types of tables and chairs and so on, as well as a row of computers to access if they don't have access to their own computer. And then the smart table in the middle of that, just for some other way to access information and participate in activities. And then the final slide I have is offering options for students to wait between classes, or to have maybe more leisurely kind of time to sit and read a book, not necessarily go somewhere else, but be able to spend time in a comfortable way in the building. So on the left-hand side, there's different examples of spaces to rest before classes. So that's right in front of the classrooms, and again with access to daylight. And then some. I mean, this this goes back to the flexible seating. But I thought it was, even though it was, this session is not about flexible seating, I thought this was really a cool way of a really great example of how you can offer different options for where students sit, and then it also then gives them more creativity in terms of how they spend their time and what they want to do in those spaces, I guess. And this, these slides are by no means a advertisement of any particular company or designer. I have no idea who created this furniture. And it's also, it sounds all great. This is a new renovated building. We had all these funds. that's not the point. The point, I think, is about options and flexibility and doing the best, being intentional with the spaces you have and finding resources to make those spaces as flexible and accessible to everyone as possible. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I loved beyond the you guys have done a really thoughtful job of creating those flexible spaces and lots of options for your students and faculty. But I just love the intention behind that intention to actually let the students experience that and experience what that feels like as a learner and as a classmate and when they're working in groups. And so then they can think really intentionally about how they enact that in their classrooms. And I hadn't thought of it from that perspective before. That's really brilliant. I love that. I love that. So of course I have to ask, like, what's the most popular? What are the most popular places? Because I know which one would be mine, but I'm curious.
Well, so my favorite is the rooftop, but there's never room there.
Yeah.
Classes are in session, but I think the entire building, honestly, and we have some classrooms that are for our college, like, they are assigned to our college where we all teach, but then there are other classrooms that are available to faculty from all over the university. And many of my colleagues share that, like, their first choice is to teach in the College of Education, Health and Human Sciences just because of the classrooms we have now. And it is really, so my favorite is the classroom with the tables that allow for much more collaboration and not the traditional seating in rows and so on, right? But it's really difficult once you start teaching in such environment. I will choose whatever time of the day they can give me as long as I can teach in that space, rather than pick time of the day that's convenient to me. Just because it's really hard to go back once you experience this flexibility and all these options and access to the technology also.
Yeah, in terms of the level of engagement of your students, in terms of how the classroom follows that.
So Corinne, which would be your favorite space?
Oh, the rooftop, hands down.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. If I could take a picture of my favorite space in our building, I work at an ISD, and we just redesigned some things. So there's one table out in our lobby room, and it's next to these big windows. And there's all the sunlight, and whenever I feel stuck on something, I go there. And it's a popular spot. It's also close to coffee though too, so that helps. But yeah, definitely, it's amazing how big a difference the natural light makes. I think that intuitively we kind of know that, but it's incredible what a difference that can make in terms of our energy and focus. So awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. I appreciate that. So now we're going to go to Amy, and Amy's going to talk a little bit about the physical space too. But I threw this slide in here because we said, we're going to be talking beyond flexible seating. And I love this excerpt from a blog by Pernille Rip, who's an educator out of Wisconsin, but presents nationally and internationally about reading, and does some really creative things with her classroom space and virtual spaces and lots of other things to engage her students. And I just love this quote from, it's just, like I said, just a piece of a quote from one of her latest blog posts. And it says, and so I come to the natural conclusion, my work is not about giving the students a voice, but instead about space, and more specifically, giving them back the space we took from them in the first place. So definitely is her belief that putting students back kind of in the driver's seat of their learning is a really important part of being a really responsive educator and intentional. So Amy's going to give some examples of how she does that in her classroom. And so Amy, if you want to just, quickly introduce yourself and how you kind of got into this type of thinking around your classroom design, and give some examples of the cool things you're doing.
Great. Hi, my name is Amy Niklash. I've been teaching for 19 years. And I've taught a variance of grades. I've taught from 6th, 7th, and 8th. I think where I really started to understand UDL and the power of UDL was when I had to write curriculum. And I think learning to look at teaching as an art and becoming an artisan really helped me to develop this foundation and how to make the classroom for my students, not for me and my comfort as a teacher. So you can kind of see here, I guess for me, when writing curriculum or when teaching during the day, you know, our kids, they are different now. You know, the technology, there's a lot of distractions. You have to be on stage and it has to be quality teaching. So UDL really helped frame it for me. And UDL is so interconnected. So if you can get kids to want to learn, you know, at times, you know, the bell may ring and they're running to my class because they know I'm going to start and they don't want to miss. So I'm like, okay, maybe I am, you know, on track of where I need to be. But really making the passion of learning come alive. And the way that I have found that that happens is to empower students and allow them to be creative and allow them to find and use their intellect to solve problems. So mine will kind of be more of a curricular lens. But for me, you know, the whole goal, again, like I said, is to foster engagement and maturity and a need to learn. I want my students to want to know more. So every unit I start with, obviously, is going to begin with an essential question in which I will scaffold and layer instruction. One of the most powerful things I'm finding now is through the Common Core, being able to really connect ELA and social studies. You know, and these same skills are being taught. The literacy skills of ELA are the same of social studies. And kids get this route practice that they need because a lot of these skills are developmental and take years to develop. Choice, I've always had a lot of success with choice. So if you see that question there, how can governments violate human rights? We have a very large unit on that. And so looking at it from that lens, we participate in book clubs, so they get a choice of book. They're going to study a country, they can choose what country. Writing prompts and resources, who their peer editor is in their workspace. My classroom is pretty free. I learned a lot today from the first two speakers. Thank you. One of the things, the setups are amazing, but the part that I took away was the reasoning why behind the setups. I think that is in the structure of the classroom. That is a piece that I think as educators, we often overlook. We have so many things to do, and giving that freedom, you have to be a really teacher, or kids will be disengaged and they won't manage their behavior. So if you're going to teach in the structure, you have to make sure you understand your curriculum and it's engaging and it's scaffolded where kids can feel success. I love the part where David spoke to treating kids like they're in high school or in adults. I have also found a ton of success with that piece and the independence that comes from that. Kids at first aren't always really comfortable with giving them the responsibility, but time their comfort grows, and by the growth that I have assured in my classroom is significant. So I just love watching kids come in as immature at times, 6th graders, and me, I'm like a high school student. So the way that I do that is, first of all, curriculum, I try to make it really relevant and give them a perspective of the world. There's no bias. anything that we do a lot of task list work where kids can work on their own, and I'll type the task list up and they'll have to check it off, and then they can come and work with me if they need that time, or work with another partner. Again, I had a lot of the resources out. I didn't have the clear bins. I like that idea. But the kids are able to come and grab the resources that they need when they need them. But again, that takes a lot of pre-teaching. And we're getting better in public schools at learning how to bring in the social or the soft skills that are needed to be able to manage yourself. So that's a work in progress on that side as well. Mediums, so many of our kids are, they learn in different ways. And I find continually layering the information using different videos and articles, images, artifacts, poems. I just keep layering until the formative assessment data reflects that they're gathering content and they're able to express what the content means to them. But again, if I were to just present that in one format, I lose kids. So being able to use multiple mediums as a way to build engagement is a really strong element of a classroom that fosters engagement. And again, engaging in the work of adults, being able to provide tangible solutions to current events or human rights issues. Corinne, do you mind going to the next slide there, and I can kind of point out what I mean by that a little bit. So if you look here, this is an actual question I asked my 6th grade students, is who should own Jerusalem? The Civil War has been going on there for over 50 years. And kids at first, they're like, what? Where's Jerusalem? And, when kids are presented with a task or a question that requires deep research, a lot of learning, a lot of chunks of learning, and then they go home and they see it on the news and they talk to their parents, what's their parents' perspective? What's their perspective? The engagement I find is significant, and the kids feel smart. They're confident from those elements. So here are some of the examples of things that I was kind of talking about. If you look here, if we tie to broader systems, you can see my ELA Social Studies curriculum crosswalk here. And this is where I take ELA skills and literacy skills, and I embed them to learn social studies content. So it reinforces the skill sets on both sides, and the kids, it makes connections for them. Below there, you can see that is actually a picture of a fault. We were studying the faults in California when I taught science. So kids were given paper and desk and tape, and they had to build a solution and demonstrate what the fault looked like. And the neat part about that picture right there, if we talk about equity-minded classrooms, the little girl there is a very talented student. And my little guy there, he has had troubles learning. And they've worked together on that project. And it was amazing to watch those two work together. And they were in the same space. They trusted each other. They felt like they both had something to contribute. And I think a lot of that had to do with the way that I asked them to show their learning. So we do a lot of skits. We do a lot of videos to show learning. Again, literacy and what we know about literacy, if it's always writing or regurgitating information, there's a significant amount of kids that are going to be at risk of learning because of other environments that they have experienced, where maybe they have not been exposed to the vocabulary or given the literacy experiences they need to be successful in the classroom. My grown-up environment, so this would be a day like at the end of the marking period, they would have a set of things that they had to work through, and they would meet with me when they were done. But they know they had to have these things done. They could choose to do it when they wanted to. They could go out of order if they wanted to. They could come in at lunch if they didn't finish things, or after school. And again, it didn't come down to me saying you have to get this done. I'm like, well, where are you at in your task list, and how can I support you through that piece? And then the book clubs, I've had a ton of success with teaching kids about the world by using book clubs. Scholastic has really caught on to that. There is amazing historical fiction books out. I actually have a book club for teaching government systems. And for years, government systems are so abstract for kids, especially sixth graders. It was difficult for them to grasp not living in a country where the freedoms were not present that we experience daily. So I found a great way to build the schema or the prior knowledge was through book clubs. And I have like 15 titles that represent a theocracy and a monarchy and dictatorship. And kids are able to preview books and then choose what book club they want to be a part of. And again, as we read the book, I use a literacy strategy called reciprocal teaching, which has a very high effect size for helping all types of readers. It's broken into 4 roles. And kids, so again, taking those ELA skills with learning the content and working in mixed ability groups. So we've had a lot of success with that. I think I have one more slide, don't I? Or am I done? So here's a couple other examples of using space. This is my classroom, and I've been blessed with basically a double classroom where I've been able to play around with what works for kids. So if you see there in the upper left-hand corner, those are my government station activities, where this is what we do in the beginning to build kids' schema before we really start talking about what it means to be a citizen in some of these other nations. If you notice here, these groups, they'll move from different groups. So we've embedded the movement piece in, and they're color coded. So you can see I have a visual here to organize their learning through a brain frame where they look at the characteristic of the nation. They interpret a quote and what were some of the themes. So again, bringing in the ELA component, where bringing in the map skills of social studies, interpreting images, and then watching a video, and then taking facts from that. So they would go through about 7 different stations at that point. And now I'm ready to start giving them, they have a pretty solid, a starting point. So from that, we would do additional activities until their formative assessment data represented that they understood what it was like to live in these different governments. This is an example of one of my writing prompts for my informational essay, and kids needed to decide which prompt would work best for them. At first, this was pretty controversial in my school. Some individuals thought it was too much for kids, but what I was finding is it wasn't so much always about ability. It was about where kids were at in their comfort zone. So to me, I made the connection that I have to offer a lot of different options for kids if they really want to own learning. So prompt A was a prompt that was for somebody who really wanted to challenge themselves, or somebody that was quite talented in writing a paper. And B was a little bit more for students who just wanted to, dabble where they were at, and they just wanted to be comfortable. And my C prompt was for my students with special needs that maybe needed something less but could go deeper. I had a ton of success with that, especially when we look at writing and how difficult it is for any student. And the Common Core requires a ton of writing. And I'm excited to see where our kids are going to be in 10, 15 years with all the writing we're doing as a nation. I think we're going to see some students that are very skilled. And this last one here is sorry, not my last one, but this is simulation here. I took a shot from a video. And what this is it's a car lot. So I used a simulation of a car lot to teach economic systems. And the car lot owners would represent the different systems if it was a command economy or a capitalist economy. And then students would have to try to buy their designs using that format of that economic system. So again, taking something that is so abstract and allowing kids to participate first, and then adding on the learning after that makes the learning that much more concrete and solid. In the upper right-hand corner is an example of one of my book clubs, and this is where they've read the reading part that they got to that day, and then they were making predictions, they were clarifying unknown words, they were summarizing, so if they were really using all the necessary UDL skills to comprehend, and they were comprehending what it was like to live in another country. So what I found basically with UDL is it's just really great teaching. I love the card deck. It organized it, it framed it. I think we ask teachers to be great and really skilled, but there's so many parts to being an effective educator that when we can frame it to understand all the elements is when we'll really start to see true growth, because this is such a paradigm shift. And no longer can we be presenters. We are true artisans and true educators that have to create and allow students to do that learning. So I've had a lot of success from that, and I continue to learn, and I'm thankful because, you know, I've been teaching 19, 20 years, so now I'm at a point where I still love teaching. It's still exciting to go in, and how are they going to react? Are they going to get what I'm doing today? You know, and you don't really see that your 20-year mark, and I think it was the concepts of UDL that really helped me aspire to be an artisan in my craft.
Well, Amy, I think that you're always been an artisan at heart in your craft, knowing you as an educator. But I loved one of the first things that you said, that how UDL helps you frame about making the classroom for your students, not for yourself, that you're designing your classroom and those experiences for your students and what helps engage your students rather than what makes you feel comfortable as an educator, which is oftentimes, understandably, kind of being the sage on the stage. Feels much more comfortable. That empowering the creativity in your students, because they definitely have it. David referred to that in the space design challenge, that the students bring that, teachers may bring more of the practical experience, but the students bring that level of creativity. So letting them shine with that. And the examples of how you use that space to really allow opportunities for your students to work collaboratively. In your classroom, you also have some spaces for students to go if they need to kind of get away by themselves and have some individual time. And then you provide that lots of your space involves lots of ways for them to access the content. So you've got the videos, and you've got graphs and infographics and maps and charts and all of those things available within your space for your students to have at their fingertips when they need to access it. And then you're there you're kind of helping them direct as they, come to you with questions, and so that even that time, that space of time in your classroom, they direct when they're moving and picking out the next resource and when they're moving to the next stage, and you're there to support and check in with them when they need it and coach them when they need it, but they're really very self-directed because of all of these resources you've made available, which is excellent. So thank you for sharing those examples. We have a few minutes left, and so Lainey or Mackenzie, do you guys have any questions from the audience for any of the panelists tonight?
Yeah, there's actually one specifically for you, Amy, from Latanya Motley. She asked, did the student know what the prompts mean, referring to the essay? And also, did the students have the option to select the prompt, or did you assign it to them?
Well, did the students understand the prompt? Actually, we are pretty deep in our district in writing with purpose, and we actually dissect the prompt and we go through the verbiage and what it means and what you need to do. So really understanding the prompt is the first part of that lesson. It's very detailed. We circle the verbs of what you have to do, what do you have to know. So really understanding the prompt is a big part of it, yes. Did I assign? No, I let kids decide where they were at first. Actually, most often they're right on target where they're at. Sometimes if I get a fencer that I think can do more, you know, I'll just kind of have a conversation and say, so how are you feeling about this? Why did you choose this? I think you could do this, but if you're only comfortable here, we can stay here. And again, you know, just giving them that choice, because really, if we look at education today, it's not so much about the content, it's about the skills. So I know they're going to write a lot more informational essays. And if they want to have less in that essay and that essay be much more polished skill-wise, that would definitely be a place that I would want them to go.
Great. She did want to qualify before we move on to the next one. If they understood that prompt A, B, and C were for particular groups, if they were aware of that.
Oh, no, they weren't. I mean, it was interesting to watch. One of the things that UDL does right away is the idea that I'm in reading level A, I'm in reading level B. It's really non-existent in my room. You know, a lot of that has to do with, we talk a lot about strengths and weaknesses in my classroom, and kids are very well aware of what their strengths are and maybe areas that they struggle. They are always in mixed ability groups and presenting the information in such diverse ways that, you know, all kids are able to learn, instead of, you know, presenting it in one way where maybe the student who only learns by listening would master the material. So that is one thing that I can say UDL does. And like that example of them building that earthquake fault, you know, that was a very high student, and that was a student that was at risk and really struggled. And just to watch, you know, we look at an equity-based classroom. That's what UDL creates. So again, did all my kids that struggle with certain things, did they pick the lowest one? No. Sometimes they pick higher, and I'd let them try, and sometimes they'd get into it and say, it's too much. I'm like, okay, well, let's pare it down. So that is one thing I work really, really hard to make sure that who's high, who's low, you know, setting the classroom around a culture of we all have different strengths and weaknesses that we bring to the table.
Mackenzie, did you have anything from Twitter? Or?
I do, yeah. So there was a kind of general question to all of the panelists about what are some of the challenges that you faced in your designs and how you overcame those challenges.
How about David or Alex? Do you guys want to chime in on any of that?
I think one of the challenges is something I mentioned is access to resources. So, you know, it was great to show pictures from a brand new building, but maybe not every college building has access to these resources. And I try to emphasize how important it is that it is all about your creativity and intention of having those options and having that flexibility. Because, you know, thinking back to being a classroom teacher years ago in Ohio, I had those flexible spaces and those options for my students without having access to these kind of resources. And it came from just the way we set up the classrooms, the way, you know, the things we found at garage sales or whatever. It's about what you want to do, not really about how much money you have to access it. So I guess that's my thought.
Yeah, I was gonna mention the same thing when I've run some breakout sessions at conferences with the cards. It's always the money question. You know, where can we get cheap furniture? And then the teacher starts sharing, well, I've got this site and I've got this site, and, you know, go to garage sales and all that stuff. And that's why I wanted to touch on at least one of the ideas, of which there are others in the card deck, that some of them can be pretty simple space hacks. So, but I think another one, and it comes to mind partly because I was at a teacher training workshop this afternoon at a local high school, and they brought in all the teachers that were going to be working in the active learning classrooms that they've outfitted with new furniture in the school. And I would say another challenge is just helping educators understand what all their space can do. You know, with flexible seating and furniture and active learning and multiple technologies, there's so many different ways you can teach within that space. But unless there's a bit of a demo and some conversation about it, you know, they don't recognize the capacity of the room to facilitate a lot of different learning modes. So I think we've all got to be conscious that, you know, educators are an incredibly adaptive group of people. They're very resourceful, and they can make anything work. And often that might be almost to a fault, where they just like make it work like it is, and they don't learn to be designers of their space and to work with the furniture that they've got. So we love the opportunity to help come in and talk about what can happen. And in this workshop this afternoon, we had some seasoned veterans that had taught in the spaces and some brand new teachers to the school. It was a great dialogue, and frankly, we used the card deck to kind of stimulate some thinking about ways space can be a catalyst to engage more kind of student ownership of their learning. So that's another challenge.
Absolutely. And I think the card deck is a great tool for exactly that. You know, even in facilitating adult learning, you can definitely see when you set the space well for that, it makes a huge difference. So there on the slide, you can see a picture of the card deck that Dave was referring to, and that the link to that resource is in the Zoom chat, and we can throw it up there one more time. These are really great. Like David said, they do have some examples of, you know, furniture that you might not have accessible, but you definitely can use those same principles and use what's available in your classroom, or like Amy, be creative and find some things, you know, like you said, thrift stores and what's in the back storage closet that hasn't been used and everyone's forgotten exists for a while, to create some of those same experiences for your students. On the right-hand side is another resource. If you're looking for another resource to help kind of get you started and prime the pump for thinking about designing space differently, Dr. Robert Dillon and Rebecca Louise Hare wrote this book called Space, A Guide for Educators. And again, it's a book if you're a book person, and but really thoughtful about how to design your learning spaces. We were hoping that Dr. Dillon would be able to join us today, but because of some travel issues, he wasn't able to. He was in the air in flight during the time of our presentation, but that book is available on Amazon as well. And so a couple of resources to help you get started. And because we're running out of time, as we always tend to do, a couple of quick things before we go is, if you're in the Great Lakes area and around Michigan, we've had people from Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Canada, Wisconsin join us. But if you're looking for a great fall trip, come and join us at the Great Lakes Regional event. That will be, it's the 3rd annual event. It will be at Macomb ISD in Clinton Township, Michigan on October 21st and 22nd. And there's a link there where you can find out more. You can we'll throw that in the Zoom chat too. But always a great connecting, opportunity for networking and coming and learning from some experts. And I think David has been there, and we've had some really great learning and discussion. And the UDL chat that happens on Twitter the 1st and 3rd Wednesdays of the month. And of course, we have our monthly network and learn sessions too. So come join us again. I'm going to stop the share just for a second. And if any of our panelists want to say anything before they go. Well, thank you. I just want to thank our panelists for joining us tonight. Thanks for taking the time to be here and put that information and resources out there. Thank you for participants for joining us. on the Zoom chat or on Twitter. And we hope to see more of you the next Network and Learn session. So thanks everyone, and have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.